Yeah, yeah.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to a little impromptu episode with Steve and I. We don't really have a title for this one, but Steve has something that he really wants to reflect on in terms of how his performance and how his training's been going over the past year. I wanted to kick things off with you, starting from where things left off, which was post nationals. So everyone kind of had this idea that you were going through like a hamstring tear and you weren't exactly healthy in your lead up to Worlds, right? So timeline
Yeah,
wise, things were a bit compressed for you. But how did you
yeah.
kind of mentally feel during that prep?
Okay, so if we're going to go like quite deep into the way that I felt leading up to that and how that felt. And I think a lot of people deal with injuries differently as well. And myself as an athlete, like I'm willing to push through anything all the time. And I guess leading into nationals, I lied about the way that my training was going in a way. I kind of lied to myself, right? Like to try and perform. And you could see that with my attempt selections on the day. They were just poor. Weren't reflective of my training and what I was doing, considering that I was only getting, one top set in a week for that or something like that. But was able to hold on to top end strength, kind of. And I guess after nationals, like we had this period, right? It was like we had kind of a sit down, we had a talk. I had a big think, and I remember you were there. You were in the Airbnb that we stayed at. I sat outside till fucking the sun came up the next day, even though I had to go and handle the whole next day, just thinking to myself, like, what I got to do to get better. Like, I've earned this spot now for Worlds, which I've been working for years, basically since I started. It was the very first conversation I ever had with Sean was I want to go to Worlds. So that's always been the goal. And then I was like, okay, I need to get healthy post nationals. That's my priority. This is what I have to do to get healthy. And the timeline should be about this far. And then, we had that first block and it was going really well. And I obviously wasn't doing anything heavy, but it's like before I kind of knew it, I was, 12 weeks out or something, and I hadn't done anything spectacular. And I was still feeling a bit of pain, but felt as though I could almost push through it at the same time. So then I started to do that, but even without kind of I guess the tick of approval from Sean or anyone, I kind of just started to push myself past it because there started to be a lot of talk around Worlds and what was going to happen. King List posting stuff, just expectations that I obviously have on myself as an athlete and what I've done, what I should be capable of doing, and how I was training at the time just didn't reflect that. So I guess I started to try and bring my training back to somewhat normal of what I felt it should look like based on what I'd done in the past and how I progressed. And then essentially, what that happened from there is I wouldn't say I was in a good spot of training prior to doing something like that, but I almost started self-sabotaging myself because of I had this end target, this end date that I needed to be healthy by. But I didn't just need to be healthy. I needed to also be the strongest I've ever been because in my mind, that was just the way that it had to be. Like I'm going to Worlds. I have to be the strongest I've ever been because I've been working not just this prep. This prep isn't like what I'm aiming for. This is an accumulation of 5, 6, 7 years of hard work to get to this one moment. I'm not gonna be in the worst shape that I've ever been in. So I didn't care about how much pain I was pushing myself through, what I was going through, or anything like that. It was just, I'm gonna do it and I'm gonna do it no matter what. And I need to be at least as strong as I have been on the platform before. And then from there, it was good, kind of good to start with, but I just went a bit too far. So I started to do things. I was just like comparing myself to my previous self for so
Yeah.
long in that period. And I kind of just like, I guess, tried to move too fast. And then, there were sessions where like my head was in my hands, right? I was almost in tears. Like I had to leave the gym because I was that bad, just mentally. I wouldn't say that prep at all was physically fatiguing. I don't really find too many preps physically fatiguing. You just get a little bit tired, and it can be mentally fatiguing sometimes. But I found that one to be more mentally fatiguing than any other prep that I've ever done, just because of the amount of pressure that I put on myself and my body not cooperating with my mind, essentially.
Yeah. You speak about like previously in a lot of our previous podcasts that like you get a lot out of having fuel and having pressure and being able to perform in these like high pressure situations, right? What about this one made it different?
I think that's where it comes to my body not cooperating. Like I love that fuel. Like I love being able to, uh, have a battle or be in a competition with someone or be in the chat, right? And like I love that. Like it pushes me to be better. I don't mind comparing myself to others. It will make me ride to another level. Um, but then if my body's not going where my head's trying to tell it to do or tell it to go, then it's a really hard spot for me because I will try and force that to happen. I know there were sessions like you probably would have seen videos. I probably sent them to you through my World Prep with me, almost punching walls and things like that. 220 or 250 kilos not getting off the floor. People visiting from New South Wales being in the gym. I remember DT being there, Zach, and he was standing beside me while I was trying to deadlift, and 250 didn't budge off the floor because it hurt too much. I had to then do conventional deadlift off like 5 mats with like 200 kilos. I did like 10 reps, but the funny thing was I was in that much pain that day. And then like he's seen that and I was like, yes, Instagram's a highlight reel. Said that to him. I was like, I'm not in a good space. But then the next day, literally the next day, went in and pulled 270 like it was nothing.
Yeah, shit. So it's like,
So
I
it was
mean,
like,
the top set that you're doing is literally the only set that you're doing during that period of time, right? So it's like there's only so much
yeah,
you could do before your body can accept it. And you being the dog that I kind of like characterize you by, or like the way that I see is like you're willing to put your body through anything, but at this point your body's failing you, which is where
yeah,
that mentally fatiguing part comes in, because like you literally just can't do what your body wants to, or what you can't do what you want to do because of your body.
yeah, exactly. And it's just like that's where I almost had this like lingering question over myself every single day, which was like, why is this happening to me now? Why couldn't this happen in another prep? Like, why couldn't this happen a couple of years ago? Why is this the prep of all preps, the prep that I've been prepping for essentially for so long is now the one where my body won't cooperate with me. Nothing's going right. And it's just, I was down, right? I knew I didn't know. I didn't want to admit to myself. Like I was always acting confident. Still saying like I'll be up there. Like I promise I'll be up there. Like I'll put through the best performance I've done. Like I'll still be do it. I'll still do it. I'll still be capable, and I'll still find a way because I've always found a way to kind of show up when I needed to. But it wasn't until I guess the week of competition, like when you were there in Malta, until I think I it just like fell off. Like a big weight had been lifted off my shoulders. And it was almost when it was like all the stuff happened with me not being in the prime time session anymore. All the expectations just like went, and it was like a huge weight got lifted off my shoulders. And I remember saying to you, like, I don't care what session I'm in, like, I'm not the strongest I've ever been, and I won't be there. I won't, I'm not going to be competitive. That's just the way it is. And it was like in that moment, I feel like there was a lot of growth for me as an athlete at the same time. Even though I've been doing this for so long, there was a lot of growth for me to be able to actually just sit and acknowledge that and just be okay with it in that moment. And then now be at a point where I guess I'm in a better headspace now and able to talk about it. Because there was so long where I was just in kind of the dumps for a while. Just being sore, and just like off the back of a performance. Still, although I come to terms with it, still was not happy because I feel like it wasn't a representation of all the years of hard work that I've done.
Yeah, and enough times passed where it's like you don't need to hold up that act anymore, right? So it's like you are willing to talk about it, which I think is really helpful for a lot of people that would be listening to this, where it's like you are stuck in that hard spot between it's like you've got this prep coming up and you've put all this time into it, but your body's just not cooperating, or externals
Yeah.
are going shit, right? Like everyone talks about like things that you can control, but what happens when you control everything and you're still not getting the outcome? It's like you literally
Yeah,
just have to live it and pray. Like it's out of your hands at that point. If you've controlled everything that you can control, and it's like here's the outcome, right? So I
yeah,
think
exactly right.
when I saw you at Worlds and we spoke about it, because it was like at that point you were still in pain, and I was like, what are you gonna do? Right. And you were just like, I got to experience that the inflection point where you were like, at this point, I'm just gonna do what I can do and put up what I can put up because this is what my body's allowed me to do right now. And that's
Yeah,
all I can really do. Whereas I think a previous version of Steve would still kind of hold up that sense of like false confidence, be like, doesn't fucking matter what I'm doing. I'm gonna run through a wall and fucking like put up X kilos, right? But it's like
yeah,
I guess you're spending energy trying to hold up this image or like holding up this belief that something's going to happen and you don't know whether it's going to happen or not. So like holding on to that sense of uncertainty in your own head is kind of like draining energy. Like you said,
yeah,
you feel a lot lighter right now. So
yeah.
I mean, now we're post worlds. How has that kind of reflected in your training and your approach, even in just like day-to-day life?
Oh, I guess hugely, right? Like I'm not so attached to my program, to what I know works for me. Like, because I know the split that works for me, I know the training that works for me, but we're so far away from that right now just to make sure that I can continually train healthy and, have the adjustments needed through my body to, not make the compensations that it was making to kind of move the way that it was to cause issues. And just like not have that attachment anymore. So I feel good. Like I'm showing up to sessions. I have that motivation back. Like I'm almost feel like I'm back to like 20 fucking 17 Steve or something, where I'm just like a kid trying to like just loving training. And just like showing up, just enjoy putting a barbell on my back and in my hands and deadlifting, picking things up. And then, it's just like I I also have the confidence that the dog is back again. Like I'm back to like, okay, so if we take this training week, for example, on Monday, I did 17 and a half kilos more for a set of 5 than I did the week before. And it was simply because it was easier to load than what I had originally planned. I just like was like, I'll do 240, but I was like, oh, I don't want to put that many plates on and I want to put the green, but I don't want to put black collar on, so I'll just chuck the silver on too. It's like that's the old Steve coming back. So I feel like that confidence is back again. But
Yeah.
I also am like, if I didn't feel strong in that moment, I just wouldn't have. Whereas before I would have just forced that to happen.
Yeah. So it's like you're at a point now where it's like the
So
load's just coming to you at this point.
yeah, and I'm just capable of doing it, and I feel good doing it, and I'm not attached to anything. So I had no initial plans going into that session to squat 245 for 5. I didn't even know. Like, I was like, my plan was to end the block on 242, but we randomly decided that we're just going to run this for 3 weeks. And so I was
Yeah.
like, okay, we'll go up. And so I just landed on 245. That was never the plan whatsoever. Whereas usually I'm someone that would be like, okay, this is where I'm going to kind of land this week, and that's what I'm going to put on the bar, and it's going to be around, something that is up there with what I've done before, but didn't go into that session with any kind of plans, just landed on that way. Did it, was fine. A guy in the gym that I'd never met before asked if I wanted to spot with my headphones on, and it's like I knew I was back in that moment too, just in like the right mental space when I just like looked at him and shook my head. It was like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good for it. Yeah.
That yeah, that's a big thing for me. Like having that confidence back again to just be like, nah, like I'll be fine. And then but I guess from being so low through that whole prep to being now is that's where I say like I've looked back and been like, why couldn't I be like this 6 months ago? And I'll revert back to what I said before is I think I just pulled the trigger too soon on trying to be as strong as I could be in February or something, rather than like waiting. I should have just waited. Um, I believe if I waited and wasn't so ambitious and greedy in what I was doing and still and like trying to compare myself and make sure that I was at the top and forcing that. But it is Worlds, and it was my first World, so that was an experience in itself. And I obviously wanted to be the strongest. So I don't regret any of those decisions, but I've learnt from it. And if there's anyone that's going to take a message from this, is if you're in like that rehab process and you are in like a direct battle with someone, and your training sucks, right? It's shit. Like, you're going to see people around you that are prepping for the same competition, and you're going to see their training going phenomenal, right? And you're just in the slumps. Training's going shit. That happens for just about everyone at some point in their powerlifting career. We can't help that in this sport. This sport's not like basketball or golf or soccer or something where you can just continually show up and just outwork everyone, because you can't. You'll just accumulate too much fatigue. It's not one of those sports. You will just burn yourself into the ground if you did that. So you can't just outwork anyone. You can't just like force things to kind of happen. And I guess rehab's one of those processes as well. Like, when we're going through that, you can't do too much in that instance as well. You need to find the threshold that works for you, and how much your body can tolerate, and then just be okay with it, because what you've done, you've still done. You did that in the past. You've done it, all right, and you will get back there. You just need to be patient.
Yeah, like there's no point doing too much, because too much already instinctively is too much, right? And you don't get too much of a benefit from it. Like, at some point, you're just going to be facing all the drawbacks if you're just pushing things.
Yeah, and too much was probably the initial issue in the first place, right?
Yeah. How do people then get to this place where you're at now, where it's like you're more detached to training? Because it's all well and good for you to kind of go through it now, and you've gone through this maturation process. But I imagine, like, a Steve back in February, if someone were to tell you like, hey bro, you just got to detach and like do what you can do, I'm highly skeptical as to who you'd listen to. Right? Like, even
I wouldn't listen to anyone.
Exactly, even the people that you trust the most, right? So like, this all kind of just was an internal process for you. But if someone was listening to this,
it's just something.
Yeah, I was going to say, how would you kind of get someone to this place?
Yeah.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now.
Yeah, I was saying, how would you get someone to this place, knowing where you were at back in February?
I think like, as a coach, it's like, and an athlete at the same time, it's going through that as well. Like, I can then relate so well to these kind of things. Like, these scenarios pop up with a lot of my athletes all the time, and I'm able to relate to them through that, talk to them through that, and tell them when it's okay to push and when it's, hey, we can't at the moment. You're not going to get stronger just by getting sorer. It's just not beneficial. But I guess if I were to try and talk to a past self, a mirror image of me, I'm very stubborn, and I probably wouldn't listen to future Steve as well back then, because I had to go through it myself. That's who I am as a person. I have to go through things to acknowledge things and learn from that, like learn from my mistakes, and make those mistakes. And then I can teach people those things. But that's obviously why people entrust me as their coach as well, because they know that I've been through so much and can then talk them through it at the same time if they want to listen to me. But so I myself probably would listen. I did have like Sean to talk to, but at the same time, like, I wasn't very communicative with how I was feeling. It was like one session out of all of those sessions, even though there was so many terrible days that happened in that prep. There was only one day where I actually said to him, like, man, I feel bad. Like, this is not good. Like, mentally, I'm drained. I don't feel myself. I don't feel like I can, like, almost continue because of like what I'm doing, and I know I'm not going to be as strong. And he basically just like pulled me off like the ground basically, and said like without saying it, he said, "Shut up and do it." And I was like, "Okay, let's go." But that's what I needed to hear in that moment, because I was so down and we were so close. This was not back in like February or March. This was more like in like May. So like a month out. It wasn't a point of, hey, it's okay, we still got we still got 8 weeks or something that we can continually try and get better. I just pulled that trigger 8 weeks too early. I should have waited. And then when it got to a month out, I was back to where I was. And it was, no, you can't sulk right now. You got to go.
Yeah, you're at the point of no return.
Yeah, basically, I was at that point of no return. So I just learned from that. But I guess if anyone's kind of going through it, it's just acknowledging that you will be okay. I know that the date doesn't change of the competition, and we can't help that. At the end of the day, like that's just the way that it is. Schedules are schedules, and rosters are rosters. And if something's set in stone as a date, as much as we'd love to be able to change that date, sometimes we literally can't. And don't pull that trigger too soon on trying to be healthy if it's just not feasible. No matter the level of competition, because at the end of the day, if you can't get to training at the capacity that you know that you're capable of training at, because you've gone too early when you aren't feeling as pain free, then you're just going to end up spinning your wheels again. And I guess the big thing for me also is I've also been able to acknowledge that because I don't have a date right now that I have to be 100% healthy by. Like I still feel my hip, my leg, every now and then, but it's nowhere near as bad. It's not impeding me as much. Obviously, like I'm moving a lot better now, but because I don't have that date, I'm not being almost stupid with the way that I'm training and trying to force things to happen to get back to where I was. I'm just letting the weight come to me. So that not having that date there was another big thing for me, and just being able to go with the flow, and just attaching myself, being okay with it, and just the results going to happen. Whatever's going to happen is basically me just, or whoever is going through anything, following the program, communicating what you're going through, seeing your rehab specialist if you're seeing someone, and making sure that you're doing what you can do to get better and not get worse.
Yeah.
There's going to be another competition.
Yeah. The fastest pace is always going to be a slow pace at some point in your career, right? And trying to do any extra is just going to be slowing you down.
Yeah. That's like extra or doing more. Like I said earlier, this isn't like basketball, soccer, golf, or any of those sort of sports where you can just do more to be better. It's not. Sometimes, you just don't. You just got to pull it back and do what your body's allowing you to do in that moment.
Yeah, for sure. I think that'll tie about where you wanted to finish things off. Did you have anything else to kind of close off on, or you feel good?
No, that's it. That's good. I think that's fine. End it there. I guess the message is don't force yourself to try and get healthy if that's not where your body wants to be right now. Just let things kind of roll in. And like I said, there will always be another competition and another platform for you to be able to put up what you are capable of.
Yeah, for sure. And I think to add to that as well, like you can always have your coach give you that kind of perspective, but you're fortunate enough to have gone through the shit yourself, and everyone's kind of in Australia who has watched your journey can kind of see what's happened. So for anyone that does watch, they kind of see perspective from like a high level and see that it does apply as well. So it's definitely very helpful that you share your part of the journey as well as be very transparent with it. So I think as a human being as well, the fact that you've kind of grown and become more transparent rather than kind of having this like false sense of bravado is going to be helping a lot more people as well. So I really appreciate you sharing that, Steve. Must have been a couple months of holding things in.
Not a problem.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, it was. Thank you.